Welcome to From Betrayal to Breakthrough. I'm Dr. Debi Silber, and today's guest is Holly Bertone. Holly, CNHP, PMP, is a #1 Amazon bestselling author of the book, Thriving in the Workplace with Autoimmune Disease, Know Your Rights, Resolve Conflict, and Reduce Stress. She's a highly sought-after speaker and wellness expert. After spending 20 years as a project manager in both government and industry, she is now the president and CEO of Pink Fortitude and runs the health and wellness website, pinkfortitude.com. Holly is a breast cancer and Hashimoto's survivor and turned these two significant health challenges into a passion to help others. She inspires others with her quick wit, brutal honesty, and simple ways to be healthy in real life. And today's guest is Holly. If you're struggling with a betrayal in a workplace, you're going to get a lot out of this episode. Holly is going to share some insightful nuggets about paid leave, who to speak with for answers, and so much more. Here she is. Okay, you are in for a treat today because I have Holly Bertone with us. And so often when we talk about betrayal, we're talking about family betrayal or partner or friend betrayal. Today, we're going to be focusing in on workplace betrayal because it is so common. And I just don't think we've given it enough attention. So Holly is absolutely going to share her insights, her wisdom, and her stories, sharing all about workplace betrayal. So welcome, Holly.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited to share this topic because I know how crushed I felt because of it. And I'm just excited to be able to connect with your listeners and to share my story and, to really share that journey of hope and inspiration.
Oh, wonderful. Well, let's just start with your story. Let's go for it.
Sure. So my journey starts on my 39th birthday when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And before then, just to kind of give you perspective, and especially perspective of my personal and my workplace accomplishments, and not trying to brag, but just to say this is kind of where I was to kind of set a frame of reference, was that I was very career driven, climbing the corporate ladder, both corporately and then also we live in the Washington, D.C. area. So I was also had worked for a federal agency. So I always one of those people that I never interviewed for a job. I always just worked hard, was very driven and got noticed and was asked, hey, we have this opportunity. Do you want to take a look at it? So that was kind of my background in terms of working. And then personally as well, just always very healthy, very driven. I raced Xterra and triathlons and just that super healthy, driven type A person, right? And then on my 39th birthday, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. 2 days later, my then boyfriend proposed. So it was, you have breast cancer and will you marry me? And about the same time, and this was just a few months before, I had accepted one of the highest levels of positions in the government before you can get to SES. There's a 1 to 15 scale.
What's SES?
Is a selective executive service.
Okay.
So basically it's a 1 to 15 scale, and I was offered a 15, which is the highest that you can go, to run the office.
And Holly, I'm just going to stop you because you're so brilliant. I can just tell, but we don't know. Well, I don't know what 1 to 15 is, and maybe I'm the only person.
Like an employment scale of like a tier of the employee levels, right?
Okay.
So 15 is as high as you can go. So they had asked me to come in as a 15 and run the office at the federal agency. So that's, literally the highest that you can go before you get into the executive levels. And so then cancer happened and I made this huge decision to take a step down because I did not think that I could handle cancer and a high-stressed management position and a new family. My soon-to-be husband also has a son. So, it's kind of an instant family. So everything was happening at the same time. My management at the time was so supportive. They supported me throughout cancer. They supported me when I made the decision that I didn't want to be in management anymore. They supported everything. And it was so heartwarming to be, to be in a workplace and to have that support.
And before we get to the next part of the story, though, I'd love to know, how did you handle just even that diagnosis and the proposal? What was going through your head at that time?
It was, oh my goodness, it was such a whirlwind. I don't even know. I mean, I literally just got through every day. Mm-hmm. It was, and at some point, I think it was about a month or so after my diagnosis, I just felt this peace that breast cancer was my gift. Mm-hmm. And that this whole life transition was my new gift in life. And, I think it was kind of a wake-up call. I was talking about being that, type A, just very driven. And it was really a wake-up call to just take that step back and to focus on my new priorities in life. I mean, I was still working, still in a very important position, but I took a step back. And then also to focus on my new family as well. So I think a lot of it was just a shifting of priorities.
And do you know what? It is so common what you said and what I see, where the most driven women all of a sudden will get some disease. And it's as if, and maybe this is all the universe doing the work, where it's you're not taking a break and you're not taking the time you need. And I'm going to make it that you must stop. And
exactly.
Right? And you will get that break. And I'm going to make it that now you can't work and do whatever. Okay,
exactly.
Go ahead. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, and it was, my husband, my new stepson, I mean, they were so loving and so supportive throughout the whole thing. I mean, it's like, you're supposed to be starting as newlyweds and, sexy time and all of that fun stuff, right? And it was chemo and, surgery and all the not so fun stuff and trying to be a sexy fiance, trying to hold down a full-time job. So yeah, it was that kind of the universe forcing me to take that step back and say, okay, we've got some new priorities for you, girlfriend.
Okay.
Great. So, and I wanted to also talk about, my husband's support, because that's going to kind of come into context a little bit later. But 1 year later, and this was in 2010, 1 year later, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. I wasn't recovering from cancer. My doctors kept saying with chemo and everything that it's going to take a while for my body to recover. And I kept saying, no, something's wrong. So I kept pushing for answers and was finally diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune disease. Mm-hmm. And honestly, after cancer, I mean, Hashimoto's, to get that is not a fun experience, right? No one wants Hashimoto's.
I've had it. It's exhausting.
Oh yeah. Your thyroid just, all but stops working and you just, all you want to do is take a nap.
Yep.
And, but after cancer, I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. I have this diagnosis. Give me my pill. Let's move on. Right. Because after cancer, it just kind of puts everything in perspective. And what I didn't realize was that an autoimmune disease is, as they say, the gift that keeps on giving. I mean, cancer kicked my butt temporarily. Autoimmune disease was a much bigger, longer journey of kicking my butt, so to say. But it took a while. So I was able to really manage the symptoms. I started eating a lot healthier, cleaner, removing toxins, just really focusing on that kind of holistic approach to healing, a little more the alternative approach to healing. And, it was really kind of bettering the trajectory of my health. Mm-hmm. And I was, pretty excited at seeing the results. And then in 2017, and my management up until this point had been supportive as well in the workplace. Mm-hmm. In 2017, both kind of happened simultaneously. Is that we had a change in management at my job, and then also I had a health crisis, and it was a health crisis of epic proportion. I learned later on my organs were starting to shut down. Mm-hmm. So, which I didn't realize at the time. I just thought I was, really just, the fatigue was so extreme. I mean, I could barely get out of bed. Mm-hmm. And the new management team that came in was basically 4 women. So my immediate supervisor, my manager, her manager, and then the executive manager were all women. It was a fairly new management team that came in. And interestingly enough, they were all really close friends.
Okay.
So I think you have this dynamic that, I always thought women were supposed to support each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I expected. And so, I'm explaining to them about my autoimmune disease. I'm going to the EEO office and getting all the medical paperwork completed.
Mm-hmm.
The federal government, any employer actually that has more than 50 employees, you're entitled to what's called the Family and Medical Leave Act, which gives you 480 hours of leave per year.
Okay.
That you are entitled to take. So I made sure that all the paperwork was filled out. I went to my doctor, got all the medical forms, everything like that, just, during this health crisis to make sure that I could go to the doctor. They wanted me on IV treatments and, different things like that. And I was also, there were days that I would come into work and have to go home because I was so tired, or days that I just couldn't get out of bed.
Mm-hmm.
And, was really, so I really, my work performance started to falter. I really started to struggle at work. I was having cognition issues. And, so it was just kind of the perfect storm.
Right.
And so everything was filled out. And I tried to explain to them what was going on. And again, I'm legally protected, but you also, I felt like I should be explaining to them what's going on. And the responses that I got was that I should drink more coffee. The one was like, well, I have 3 kids at home and I'm tired all the time too. Just drink more coffee.
Wow.
Yeah. One, actually the nurse that I spoke with said, well, I have Hashimoto's and I just take a pill and I'm fine. So, and then it was, oh, you're tired, you're lazy, you're faking it. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was, I was expecting support, and especially, I'm legally covered and I have all of my documentation. So I was expecting their support, and instead I got the complete opposite.
So here's the betrayal right here. I guess
Right.
You were expecting, these people that you counted on, you trusted, you're working with, that they would understand and be supportive, and they're not at all, because they're just looking at it like, now who's going to do the work that you're not doing?
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's the thing, was I was still holding my own. I mean, I was barely holding my own, but I was still holding my own. I mean, they did not have to outsource any of my work to anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I was barely hanging on, but I was still getting my work done.
Right.
And, I think part of it too was like I said, I felt as women were supposed to support each other in the workplace. And I was trying to figure out why that support wasn't there. And the fact that, I had taken that step down, it wasn't like I was in a position where, I was trying to climb the corporate ladder and trying to take one of their jobs. So, so that's out of the window. So, I mean, I could see, okay, I get it. If I'm super aggressive at work and they might feel intimidated that I'm trying to take one of their jobs or something like that. But that's just not the case. And especially in the government, it just doesn't work like that. Mm-hmm. So, and especially because I had taken that step back, that, I wasn't on that management career track anymore, that was completely off the table. So yeah, it was really hard to figure out why I was, not just getting bullied in the workplace by my managers, but, to have that level of betrayal. Like, you're supposed to be in a management position. You're supposed to be supporting me. I have legal documentation that's telling me that you're supposed to be doing this.
Mm-hmm. So what'd you do?
Well, so it was a lot of self-reflection, and it was a lot of difficult conversations with my husband, because I had tried to look for another position. I had tried to talk to EEO. Their conversation.
What's EEO? You mentioned it before. I just want to make sure.
It's the Equal Employment Opportunity Office.
Okay.
Right. They're the ones that make sure that everyone's legally protected when it comes to any kind of discrimination.
Okay.
Yeah, whether it's age, race, gender, religion, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
And autoimmune disease actually is considered a legal disability in the United States. In 2009, the Americans with Disabilities Act was amended to include the immune and the endocrine system. So, if anyone ever doubted it autoimmune disease is not legally covered. It actually is a legal disability in the United States.
Oh, that's so interesting. And here I have arthritis, and I've had Hashimoto's, but I'm my own boss. So there you go. So a lot of reflection and what'd you come up with? I mean, what'd you make of it?
A lot of tears, right? Because it was, I'm first of all, I feel like my body's betraying me, so let's just start there, because I had been doing better on my health journey. And then all of a sudden this health crisis hits. So, stress to autoimmune to anything, stress is like gasoline on the fire, right? So, so you have the stress that's making it worse. I'm feeling like my body's betraying me. And then I go into work, I can barely make it in. And then I go into work and feel like my managers are betraying me. Right. So, I think the first thing that I did obviously was have that support from my husband. But at the same time, we're having conversations like, should I try to find a different job in the agency, or should I just resign altogether? And, at that point, my company, Pink Fortitude, was just a side hustle. I mean, we weren't, I wasn't really making money. It was more of a hobby. And we weren't ready to give up. We live in the DC metro area. I mean, it's expensive to live here. So we weren't ready to give up a 6-figure salary to go to zero, right? So as supportive as my husband was, coming home from work in that non-supportive environment, I still had to have those difficult conversations, right? So I think the biggest thing for me was to find those neutral parties who were supportive. And fortunately, I was talking about the women managers, the female managers, and being betrayed by them. But fortunately, my colleagues at work were very supportive. And I found that I was able to kind of lean on them and talk to them in a very safe environment.
And I was going to ask you, because I'm sure so many people listening have experienced workplace betrayal, where they were counting on something from a coworker or an employer, and then that didn't happen, or whatever the expectation was that wasn't met. What do you suggest someone do when they're in that situation? Because I imagine also they may feel, well, this is, I have this security and I don't want to leave this job, or, what do they do with that? How do you make sense and make peace out of your situation? How do you know when it's really time to go, or what's the next best step?
It was, it's obviously a very personal decision, and obviously a very difficult decision, and especially because that decision's tied to your paycheck. I mean, you don't make money, you don't put food on the table, you don't eat and pay your rent or mortgage or whatever. So, for me, I think the straw that broke the camel's back was the FMLA that I talked about. The leave that I had was 480 hours of leave, so that I could go to my doctor's appointments, that I could get my IV treatment, that I could, really try to be healthy and to have that opportunity to stay home if I needed to rest. And they actually rescinded it, which is extremely illegal. And so I went to the EEO office to talk about.
So I just want to back up here.
Right.
So you're saying you were applying for these hours, or you rightfully were supposed to be getting these hours, and they said, no, you can't take them? They had already
been approved. The hours had already been approved.
And they said, no, you can't take these?
Exactly. Yes.
Oh, okay. So
they actually rescinded it.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
And then what'd you do?
So I went to the EEO office, at headquarters, and, talked to the individuals there about what to do, because I was lost. And I looked online. There's not a lot of resources out there. So, I tried to find what I could, and it's like navigating a sea without a map. I mean, you're just like in this ocean in the middle of the ocean, and you're like, okay, I can't even see land at this point, right?
And you're not feeling well, so you're exhausted, and this is like the last thing you want to be dealing with when you don't feel well.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Okay. So then what happened?
So once I found, and they actually said, interestingly enough, that what was the phrase they used? That the agency prided itself on being able to deflect these kinds of lawsuits or anything like that, because they say, oh, well, the manager's not being discriminatory by taking away your FMLA. They're just being a jerk. And They said we use what's called the jerk defense. So I realized that going down kind of the EEO and the legal route was not going to be a good idea. to keep my job. I realized that looking for a new job was not producing any fruit whatsoever. So that was when, I made the decision to resign. And I think the biggest thing that helped me was that when I wrote the book, because it was the Thriving in the Workplace with Autoimmune Disease, because I said, there's no resources out there for individuals with autoimmune disease in the workplace to talk about your rights, your responsibilities, like what you are allowed to do, what your employer should be giving you. And so that was kind of the cathartic end to the journey when I resigned, was to be able to write the book to help other people.
And I, this will be so relevant to really anybody listening, because here's where there's this hard stop. And the hard stop could be the discovery of your betrayal, or the realization that whoever betrayed you, family member, partner, friend, coworker, anybody, where there's no going back and there's no making sense of it anymore. So you may as well make meaning and take those next steps. And I talk pretty often about the idea of death and rebirth. And it's not as morbid as it sounds. It really is the complete ending of the old. And it's only in that space are you able to birth something new. And it sounds like you had to deal with these people who absolutely didn't get it. They didn't understand. They betrayed you, your expectations. And because of that, you said, okay, you know what? I may have stuck with this for whatever reason, but now here's my opportunity to end it and start something completely new and different. So that there's the rebirth right there. So what happened?
So, and you're absolutely right. It when I was going through this journey, I think a lot of us look to our managers as our champions. We want them to be our champions. They're in a leadership position, and we look to them, for that role, to be our champions, to, help us out, to, obviously they're our managers, but, there's that level of expectation, I think, that a lot of us kind of come into the workplace with. And I really had to just kind of take that step back and say, okay, they're not my champions. And, I kind of jokingly called them the mean girls, right? But, I really had to separate it out and say, it's not me, it's them. And, this is obviously something that, their agenda, their issue, whatever. And to really, I guess, kind of divorce myself from that connection and say, I need to stand on my own 2 feet during this process. And I need to be my own advocate, and I need to figure things out, myself.
And so you resigned. Now, was this the time that you started your own business, or you took it to the next level?
So Pink Fortitude had already been established, but again, it was just kind of more of a side hustle and a hobby. So yeah, I literally first I had to recover. It took a few months just to be able to get off the couch and to get out of bed. But after that, I wrote the book and just really started to, launch Pink Fortitude into the next phase of where it is today.
And what's so interesting is, and I've worked with so many people who, of course, when you're going through it, you don't realize it, but they're grateful for their messy divorce because now they met their soulmate, or they're grateful they lost their job because now they're doing the work they love, or they're even grateful they got that disease because now they have a love and appreciation for life they never would have had that not happen. So it sounds like in your case, this was, if you didn't go through the betrayal with your, those 4 women, you wouldn't have healed. You'd taken the time to heal that you needed to, and then create the business that you wanted. What do you want to make sure everybody knows before we wrap up?
I think a lot of people talk about self-care, but I like to add gratitude as the big overarching umbrella. And, you really just hit on that in that, looking at this, I wouldn't wish my journey on anyone. It's been a painful few years, and it's been a painful journey with everything I've had to go through. I would not wish it on anyone, but I'm so grateful that I've been able to go through it. And, I think that the gratitude and just waking up every day and, I'm glad to be alive. I'm grateful. I have a top 10 that I do every single day. The second I wake up, is my top 10 of things that I'm grateful for. And, even on those, the harder health days and the days that I was, feeling the worst, it really helped to put things into perspective to say, you know what, life is worth living. Life is good. There's the good out there. It's just, you have to find it sometimes.
Beautiful. And it's so consistent with what I see and hear every day that it is the ones who go through something are the most grateful. And it gives, because it's those challenges that really give us that perspective. How do we know happy unless we know sad? How do we know bliss unless we know darkness? And it sounds like that's where you came from. So Holly, how do we learn more about you? Where do we go?
Oh, sure. So pinkfortitude.com. And actually, if you hit the / in the word thanks, so pinkfortitude.com/thank, I have lots of free ebooks and downloads and lots of fun things for everyone. So
terrific. I want to thank you so much. Just you shed lots of light on workplace betrayal, and I'm sure it helped lots of people. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
As if struggling to heal from an illness isn't hard enough, having unsupportive people around you only makes healing more difficult. Stay in touch with Holly by going to pinkfortitude.com, and we'll have all of Holly's information in the show notes at pbtinstitute.com/podcast. Here's my biggest takeaway. The people we surround ourselves with have so much to do with our health and wellness, or illness and disease. Studies have even shown how support from others helps us heal more quickly. So be careful with who you spend your time with. How do you know if they're good or bad for you? Check how you feel when you're around them. Do you feel drained, depleted, and uninspired? Or do you feel energized, happy, and better for having spent time in that way? If you need to be around unsupportive and negative people, at the very least, make sure you're not believing their harsh criticism or taking their negativity personally. These negative people can absolutely impact our health. Want to see what your betrayal from that person in your life has left in its wake? Take the post-betrayal syndrome quiz at pbtinstitute.com/quiz. And let us support you. Go to Facebook and join our group, Women Hacking Betrayal, where we give information, tools, and support to help you move forward and heal once and for all. Can't wait to be with you next time. And here's to your breakthrough.